Like so many people who care for their loved ones, I kind of jumped in feet first into the deep end without any water wings or anything. I took the decision, as you said, I was in Dubai for 18 years and I had no experience of caregiving. I had, I don't even have children, so I didn't even have parenting skills to draw on. And I took this really difficult decision. Mom needed care 24/7. That was clear to me. And so I gave up my life. I just walked out of my flat, left my business, and made my way back to Canada. And I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know anything about dementia. I didn't know anything about Alzheimer's, other than I knew nothing. I learned a lot in 4 years. So what I'm doing now is I'm trying to, and as you said, I made lots of mistakes, tons of mistakes. So what I'd like to do now is to share some of those experiences that I've had, especially the ones where I made mistakes, so that other people don't have to go through the same stress and anxiety that I did, and they can have an easier road of it than I've had. So that's my purpose, and that's what I hope will happen tonight, is that people are going to walk away with some really concrete, practical things that they can do to make their life as a dementia care partner easier. But this was Christmas Eve on 2011, and I'd been with Mom for a little over 8 weeks. And I was mostly on my own. I didn't have a lot of support at that time. And I wrote a story about it quite a bit of time afterwards. And starting off with, 'twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, it was complete chaos is what happened. 3 o'clock in the morning, Mom woke up and she wanted to go home. And she thought she was in a hotel. I was fast asleep, exhausted from all the things that I'd been trying to do, just to take care of her. And it was minus 16 degrees outside. I noticed we have somebody from the UK here, Ryan from the UK. He probably doesn't know what minus 16 centigrade is like. For the Americans in the audience, that's about, well, it's close to 0 Fahrenheit. So it was very cold. There was lots of snow, pitch black, of course, because it's the middle of the night. And I was scared. I didn't know what to do. And I kept trying to convince Mom that she was in her own house. All of those redirecting things that we're told or suggested should work were not working. We're not working at all. And I was doing everything I possibly could to keep her safe and to keep us safe. So what you'll hear in the video, and what those of you who have watched it have heard, I've condensed 3 hours of time into about 1.5 minutes. And in the first minute, it talks about, or if the first 30 seconds or so, you'll hear that my voice was relatively calm. Then there's a bit of a break. And I get I'm highly anxious by this time, and Mom is screaming at the top of her lungs. She's grabbed a flashlight. She's trying to break a window. I'm standing across the door like this, trying to block her from getting out. And she's wailing on me with the flashlight. Wow. And then she threatens to break one of the windows by the door. And I simply don't know what to do at this point. Now, I'm sure that those of you who have been caregivers have probably been in that kind of situation before.
Let go of me.
No, I'm not going to let you pull me around. I'm going out this door.
No.
Go to bed, for crying out loud.
No.
Well, I'm getting out of here. And you go to bed, I'm going to be out of this place in the middle of the night.
I'm not going to bed.
Well, go somewhere else then. Go to hell. I want out of this house.
You can't go out, Mom. Don't.
Why can't I go out?
Because it's dangerous dangerous out there.
It's not
and there's
dangerous.
nowhere
I've
to
lived
go.
there. I know how to get home. I'll hitchhike.
You can't hitchhike, Mom.
What do you mean I can't hitchhike? You've hitchhiked in your life. I want to get out of here.
I don't know where you want to go, Mom.
I'm going home.
We don't. Where is home?
It's on the Georgeville Road.
That's where we are, Mom. We're on the Georgeville
Fine.
Road. This is your house.
It's not my house. This is not my house. Don't be an idiot, Sue. Who would want to live in a house like this?
Well, I did just about everything wrong that I could have done. My behavior actually escalated the situation. And I had been I audio taped because what I wanted to do, or I had in my mind that somewhere down the line I was going to share with a wider audience how kind of crazy people were when they got dementia, how they became very aggressive, how they got out of control. And sure enough, it was playing out as I had anticipated. But when I listened back to the audio tape, I realized that a lot of the problems had been caused by my own behavior. So what I'd done was I'd taken the phone jacks out of unplugged the phones by taking the phone jacks out. So because she was calling her own number, dialing the number over and over again and then saying, well, the line's busy, I can't get through to my place, which would increase her anxiety. Then I unplugged the phone, then the phone was dead. That increased her anxiety even further. I took all of hid the keys so she couldn't find a key to put in the door to get outside. Finally, when she took the flashlight and started, threatened to break the window, I thought, I've got to do something different here. We'd already been going on for, good 2.5 hours at this point. So what do you think I did? Well, what I finally did was I bundled her up, I bundled myself up, I stuffed her cat down the front of her jacket, and I took the both of us outside at 5:30 in the morning and started up the car. We walked through the snow out to the driveway, started up the car, and drove down the road about 3 miles to the nearest village. Came back, because we're out in the middle of nowhere. There aren't any houses around. Came back to her own place, and guess what? Her anxiety level went from like over 100 down to about 10.
Okay. There's no other cookies, I don't think.
No, that's the last one, but it's okay.
Freezing out.
I know it's freezing out.
Yeah, you're warm, Pia. You can come up to bed. Yeah, you can come up to bed. You're nice and warm. Yeah, you don't want to be out in the freezing cold. It's too cold out there.
And, I thought to myself, I ruminated on this for a couple of weeks. Amazingly, it took me that long to figure out, hey, I'm better off doing what she wants to do instead of trying to make her do what I want to do. I needed to forget about my agenda completely, and wherever possible, try to make her go into her world and make her wishes a reality. So that was one of the first learnings that I had. And the more I thought about why people resist, like we hear, many times people say, well, that people with dementia don't like to be bathed. They don't like to have showers. They don't want to go into the bath. Well, why is that the case? I think what we need to do is to take a step back, and that's what I did with Mom, to go through step by step what are the processes when it was time to have a shower. What did I need to do to make her feel comfortable? And what I found out was she was afraid of things like she didn't know how to turn the faucet on anymore. She didn't know how to turn the faucet off anymore. She was afraid of getting soap in her eyes. She was, she had to close her eyes because of this fear of getting the soap in them. So then she became disoriented. So it became very clear to me as I began to analyze the situations that trying to force her was not the right way to go, but rather to try to plant seeds in her mind that helped her to anticipate rather than to fear the situations that were causing her to feel anxious. What's required is to abandon your view of the world and what your agenda is, and to really step into seeing the world from their perspective. Because, and as a caregiver, it's even more difficult because you're highly stressed from the work that you're doing, and the person who you're caring for, if it's a loved one, you may have known them for years, you expect them to be able to do the things that they used to do, to think the way that they used to think, to behave the way that they used to behave, and they simply don't. And so what I found, what was most useful for me, was to throw all of that out of the window and to try to figure out what it was that was driving the fear from her side, because usually it was something that she was afraid of or something that made her feel incompetent or uncomfortable that caused her to strike out at me. And if I could figure out what those things were, then I was able to diffuse the situations. And at the end, I'm going to share with you some very specific tips in a really easy to understand way that can bring a caregiver to a better place and be more able to manage the situation in a way that calms and controls rather than increases the anxiety and escalates. Yeah, in terms of bathing and showers, what I used to, and Mom did sometimes resist, but I think what happens is also if you get into a bad cycle, then that the details of the event aren't remembered depending on the stage that they're at, but the feeling that they had of feeling uncomfortable and stressful remains. So once you're in that kind of difficult cycle, it's a little bit harder to break. What I did with Mom for shower time was say to her, I used to do everything to make the space really comfortable. I would turn the heat up in the bathroom. I would put the shower on beforehand so that there was no turning on and off. I would guide her through all the steps, but before even stepping into the bathroom, I would say, I've prepared you asked me to get your shower ready because I know how much you enjoy being in the shower and coming out the other side nice and squeaky clean. And she then began to anticipate rather than to feel uncomfortable and incompetent when she was bathing. So, and that then we were able to build on that foundation and change that whole perception of the way that bath time was. So I think that also, if it gets to the point where the person is battling you and lashing out at you and hitting back, then it's probably time to abandon that. It's okay if they don't want to do it, let them not do it for that day. Try to, as much as possible, do what they want rather than what you want. We have, sometimes we build agendas just for the sake of having agendas, and they're not really we don't really have to follow them. We just think we have to follow them. The house doesn't exist, but for me, what I started to do was try to find out what it was that she wanted, why it was that she wanted to go home. So it's to step into their world and to say, you know, talk about the family, talk about the parents, talk about the children, because she's back in 20 or more than that, 30, 40 years ago. And yes, you can't drive around every day. You have to find a way to think about solving their issue of going home. What is that about? Does she want to take care of the kids? A little more information maybe would be helpful. What happened in the second scenario is, by this time, well, now we're talking 3 years later, and what I had learned, I have been applying since then. So, but not always. It's not always easy. As Carol has said, a friend of hers has shared with her the slogan, "Join their journey," and that's really kind of hits the nail on the head. So what, in this particular example, which you'll see in the video, she and I were making dinner, and everything was going along swimmingly, and we were side by side, and she picked up by the fridge, there was a sticky note with a number on it. And she began to read 819-820-4356. And I was thrilled that she was able to read. So I wanted to encourage her to keep on down the page and to keep reading. So I had an agenda in mind for her. I went over beside her and I asked her to keep trying to read what was following. And she had a hard time doing it. She got the first line right, but she wasn't able to read the rest. She got frustrated, and I said, oh, thinking out loud, oh, I bet you need your glasses. And she took it as, from her standpoint, it was, oh, you're not competent, you can't read anymore, you need your glasses. I thought it was ironic and funny that my thinking out loud should have been interpreted like that by her. And so, yeah, I laughed out loud. And then she, of course, took that as, oh, I'm being laughed at. I'm not as good as I used to be. It was a reflection on her competence. And so the next, and there again, it sort of escalated. And I said, oh, I'm going to get you some apple juice, Mom. She said, I don't, or first of all, she said, my glasses are good enough. And then she didn't want apple juice. And then, oh, she was tired. And then she kind of stomped out of the kitchen. What happened, somebody might say, well, gee, you know, she was really cranky, or that was part of the disease, part of this anger and aggressiveness is manifested because of the dementia. But actually, if you look at it, and when I look back on it, and even at the time, I understood that it was my behavior that caused the aggression to come out on her side. So I maintained a calm tone of voice and just accepted that this was, you know, where it was coming from me, not from her. So I think that those learning, those self-examination and being aware that it's not necessarily, and perhaps not even mostly not the disease, that our behavior has, as caregivers, really has an impact on the behavior of the person that we're caring for. That's what I've learned. This tomato looks excellent. You love tomatoes, Mom. Okay. What does that say, Mom?
Says 819-820.
That's right. You did the first line perfectly, Mom. What does the first line say? What does this say, Mom? I bet you can't see.
Yes, I can see perfectly. What are you talking about, you stoops?
I meant, what I was going to say, Mom, was I bet it's hard for you to see without your glasses.
Well, my glasses are pretty good.
Okay, shall I get the glasses for you?
Yeah, well, you won't get any. I've just got stuff out of there now.
Okay, let me get the glasses and see. Okay. I'm going to get you some apple juice, Mom.
No, I don't want apple juice.
You don't?
I said that before and I said it again.
Okay, I won't get you apple juice then.
Well, I'm getting out of here because I'm tired.
Are you tired?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to come and sit? I've got a spot for you to sit. And yeah, Ryan makes an excellent point. He says something in all innocence, and he says he tries to help, but yes, you know, it's taken by them in the wrong way. But so then what we have to do as the care person is to just keep an even keel, and it's really hard to let go of your ego, because the very easiest way is to just let it be like water off a duck's back, and to know that that part, that interpretation that they're making, is the disease, it's not them. And if you can get to that point of letting go of your ego, you'll be much better off in the long run, and simply agreeing with them. It's a huge, big learning curve. But what I found personally was that the anger and the aggression part, this bang bang, caused my anxiety and my anger and all of my, family issues to bubble up to the surface, and then increase the tension, and created an environment in which conflict was more likely to occur than not. So it really became important to completely let go, not argue whatsoever, just agree all the time with whatever she was saying. And the more I agreed, the easier it got. So for example, I wanted to also talk about one situation last week. It's still happening. This is 4 years on, and I visit her every day. And she said to me, something was amiss. She was she was clearly uncomfortable, and we were having a conversation. And she said to me, "Well, you made the mistake. It was your mistake." And where did that come? I had no idea where that came from, and I just said, "Yeah, you're right, Mom. It was my mistake. I don't know how I could have done that, but clearly I've done something wrong." And she lit into me again. Yeah, why do you keep doing these things? Gee, I'm not really sure. I'm sorry I made a mistake, and I'll try not to do it again. And eventually, if you keep playing that same record over and over, the lake will calm, the waves will eventually calm down, and you'll succeed in getting less conflict, less aggression, and less anger if you're the one who takes control and not react to what they're saying and doing. But the idea here is to reduce the aggression and anxiety by taking control of your own self rather than expecting the person with dementia to behave in a logical, rational, and sensible and predictable way as they may have all. Well, I mean, few people behave like that to begin with, but
Right.
now that their brain is changing, it becomes even more difficult for them to do so. So it's really up to the caregiver to take control of the situation and stop the potential for this bang bang. Yeah, exactly. Would you rather be happy or would you rather be what? Right. That kind of sums it up really nicely. And I've also got. And the other thing is to think about what it's like from their perspective. You know, really to get into their reality. I wanted to read. You know, I shared a post with the 20 questions that help explain why people with dementia get agitated and physically aggressive. I just want to read a couple of them. You know, what would you do if you were in their shoes? How would you react, for example, if your children took your car keys away and told you you couldn't drive anymore for absolutely no reason at all? That's what's going on in their minds. How would you react if people told you it was daytime when you knew for a fact it was the middle of the night? When I was having this situation with Mum on Christmas Eve, I was saying, you know, Mum, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. She's going, no, it's not. It's bright daylight outside. I mean, it was pitch black. So they're just in a completely different space. It's not up to them to come into our space. It's up to us to go into their space. And Carol is absolutely right in saying, would you rather be happy or would you rather be right? But mine with my mom wasn't, it was, I wouldn't say stormy, but it wasn't always positive all the time. We were close, but we are two independent women, and we certainly, you know, there was some of this going on for decades. So when I began recording my interchanges with her, I thought myself to be very calm. I thought I was using a really conciliatory tone of voice. I thought I was being very gentle. I thought I was kind and nurturing and all of these things. And then I listened back on the recordings, and I was really surprised at how not kind my voice was, how my tone of voice really wasn't as I thought it was. It was much sharper. It was much more aggressive. It was demanding. It was a whole bunch of things that I thought it wasn't. What I had to do was to really monitor what it was that I was doing and to do everything I could to think about where she was coming from. So, you know, I don't know again what kind of dementia your mom has, and all of the circumstances around it. But what I did find with my mother, what worked really well was to again not argue and to apologize for the situation as it was. So to say, you know, Mom, I'm really sorry that I'm sorry. This is hard. It's hard for me. It's hard for you. and I understand how you must be really frustrated and how you must be really angry. And this is not a good situation. I'm really sorry. I've done that. The only 2 times my mom has hit me was at that Christmas Eve, during that Christmas Eve situation. And then once again, about 6 to 8 months ago, I had taken her to the toilet, and she was, whacking me around the side of the head, and quite violently with both hands. And I again said to her, Mom, I don't blame you for being angry. I don't blame you for being upset. If I was in your shoes, I would probably be hitting me as well, because it's really hard. This whole situation is just really hard. And she stopped immediately. She stopped immediately, and the whole situation just went down about 100 degrees in temperature. It calmed her right away. I think the really hard part is to look at yourself, because there's so much out there that points at the disease, that says, so we're already set up that, people who have dementia get aggressive, they get angry, they do all of these bad behaviors. And in my experience, they're not, if somebody did to me what I had done to my mother and what people do to other people with dementia, I would respond in the same way that they're responding. I would get upset. They don't have the ability, or depending on the stage, they may not have the ability to articulate their anger. So they, they get a whack, or they give a whack, and then they get described as being violent and aggressive. So, it may be that there are situations where people are naturally violent and aggressive, and it may be there are situations in which the dementia is causing that violence and aggression.
Right.
However, in my experience, there are ways to mitigate that, and the way that I found that works for me is to look at me, and especially tone of voice, especially behavior, and then the actual words that I'm saying, to monitor why is she behaving the way that she is. When I took a really good hard look at it, that it was my fault. I was the one that was causing her to be aggressive by not doing what she wanted. And when I went to see her doctor and her geriatrician, both of them prescribed antipsychotic medication, which knocked her right out. And that really wasn't a solution. It was, what I learned over time was to do some different things. And as we have only about 15 minutes left, I just want to share what those, to summarize what I did differently from when I actually started. What I was trying to do was to avoid this bang bang. And Ryan, you won't know this song, but maybe some of you from way back when will remember Nancy Sinatra singing I was 5 and you were 6. We rode on horses made of sticks. You wore black and I wore white, and you would always win the fight. Bang bang, you shot me down. Bang bang. So what we want to do is avoid that. Bang bang is what we're trying to get away from, to stop this bang bang. And I wanted to keep with that acronym so that you would remember, walking away out of this workshop, you would have something to take away with you that would maybe help to diffuse situations when you found yourself in them. So the first B of bang is to breathe. And you might think that this is a really simple thing, and it didn't occur to me until I started to do work with, or started to learn from, the videos of Teepa Snow, which I would also highly recommend that you watch on YouTube. They're absolutely fantastic, and they'll give you additional techniques for working specific physical techniques that you can use to reduce aggression and anxiety and anger. One of the first things that she says before you do anything is to take 3 deep breaths as a caregiver. Don't go into the situation, breathe. It's the equivalent of, count to 10, take a time out, regroup, don't react, respond. Naomi Fell, thank you. Oh, you know it. Naomi Fell is recommends the same thing. She puts it in different words. She calls it centering. So before you engage with the person, take a step back into yourself and let go of all the ugly stuff that you thought, or that's left over from the day before, or that's left over from a lifetime, and be prepared to engage with the person in as calm a manner as possible. There's a saying too that I've found interesting with respect to families and parents, and if you're caring for a loved one that's a family member, that they know how to push your buttons because they helped to sew them on. So my mom would say to me, even in her confused state, she knew stuff about me as her child that she knew how to turn me, to get at those tender spots that really hurt and made me react. And maybe it was because she needed to get out some of the aggression that she had. So the first bang is breathe. That's the first one. The second one is, I call it a triple A. So you want to assess, and accept. Those are 2 of the 3. So assess in the sense of, like a first responder. When a first responder, a fireman or a paramedic or a police person goes into a crisis situation, they don't leap in and start to take action. First of all, they figure out what the terrain is, look at what's happening, try to understand the mood of the person, what just happened before, what might have triggered them, are there loud noises, do they need to be toileted, have they had some kind of experience just prior that might cause them to feel angry or aggressive. So that's assess. The second one, the second A, is accept. And by that I mean that accept that you have, as the caregiver, you have more responsibility and more control over the situation than they did. So if you accept responsibility of taking control and doing what you can to lower the temperature. The third one, the third triple A, the A of BANG, is agree. Agree with everything. So whatever that person says, just go with it. And you'll find that, what I found was life got a heck of a lot more simple. So Mom would say to me, for example, I remember one occasion, this happened all the time when we were in her house. She would say to me things like, oh, where did that girl go? I'd say, what girl? And she'd say, well, the one that was just here. And instead of saying, no, there wasn't any girl here, it was just much easier to say, oh, I think she had to leave. She had to go. She had another appointment. And Mom said, well, gee, that was rude of her. I said, I know. Can you believe she did that? Just like out of the blue, here she was, and then she was gone. Much easier to agree and go with the flow. So the N of BANG is never, never argue. Just don't do it. Never argue. If you don't argue, you don't get into any fights.
Right,
And
right.
if you don't get into any fights, you don't have any aggressive and angry behavior in return. This is just what I've learned. The G of BANG is go and let go. So go with their flow, as I've just talked about, and let go of your ego, which as a family member, I can tell you is not easy to do. It's very hard. None of this is easy, but it's well worth the payoff in the end. Finally, now when I said bang, bang, so there's two bangs. So that BANGS, bangs. The final one is S is sorry. Say I'm sorry.
Another hard
And
one.
oh, really hard. It's really hard. And it's not, well, I'm really sorry. I was only trying to help. It's, I was trying to help and I'm really sorry. The tone of voice, people pick up on tone of voice before anything else. They hear it, they react to it, they don't respond to it, they react to it. Teepa Snow has six recommended I'm sorry's. I'm sorry I was trying to help. I'm sorry I made you angry. I'm sorry I embarrassed you. I'm sorry I made you feel stupid. I'm sorry I didn't mean to, but I treated you like a child. And that's often what I did it myself to my mother. And when you think of it, what parent is going to want to be bossed by their children? I don't know of any. And of course, they're going to react in a way that is not as we would want it to be as caregivers. We think we're doing what's best for them. But the most powerful one for me, and I've used it a lot with Mom, is with the one I talked about earlier, which was, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, this is hard. It's hard for me. It's really hard for me. And I know it's really hard for you because it must be. It must be just devastating to be in the situation that they're in. So B is for breathe. Take 3 deep breaths or a timeout or regroup, center yourself. A is the triple A, assess, accept, and agree. N, never argue. G, go with their flow. Whatever it is, use your imagination, go with their flow, and let go of your ego. And finally, S, say you're sorry. And the beauty of this thing is you can use those steps at any given time. So if I had have known this on Christmas Eve 2011, I would have had 3 hours more sleep than what I did, and I wouldn't have been driving outside in minus 16 degrees in the snow with my mother with a cat in her coat. And I mean, it was crazy. I could have diffused that situation by breathing, assessing, accepting, agreeing, not arguing with her. I could have said, yeah, she was saying, this hotel, this is the worst hotel. This isn't my house. Who would have a house like this? I should have been saying, yeah, you're right. It sucks here. We've got to find a way to get out. And if we had have then been on the same path, it would have been much, much easier. Much easier.
Right.
My policy is, do not make the same mistakes. Make new mistakes. So I'm making new mistakes. But this really, the breathing part, I've just learned this myself. I've just learned this. But the assess, accept, agree. If you do those 3 things, you don't really need to go on to the next ones. But wherever you are in the situation, you can implement right then and there. And saying I'm sorry when you think of it, or saying you're right. If you tell somebody you're right and I'm sorry,
Right, right.
there's nothing more to say. And in fact, I wanted to recommend a couple of books. This one by Naomi Fail called The Validation Breakthrough is absolutely fantastic. Must buy. Not inexpensive, but absolutely fantastic. And also this one, Dementia Beyond Drugs. So I hope that was helpful in some, I know this is like a drop in the bucket, the caregiving bucket, but I hope it was helpful in some way, and that the next time you're in a situation where, things are escalating, that you can think of bang, 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 bang is not what we want, and to implement the breathing, AAA, never argue, etc. Hi, it's Susan again. I hope you enjoyed the edited version of the free webinar, and you're welcome to use the material to help others for training purposes, etc. One thing that I did for my own workshops, which I give half-day, 1-day, and 2-day workshops on the BANGS model, is that I developed a set of reminder cards for participants. They look like this. They have the BANGS mnemonic on the front. And they have the explanation or a reminder of what each of the letters stand for on the back. So I have these cards. I use them for my own workshops. What I did is to laminate them and punch a hole in them so people could wear them on a lanyard or whatever. I cannot provide the laminated ones, but that's something that you could do yourself if you want to. So these cards are available in exchange for a donation to my website, my blog, and to support my advocacy. So if you'd like to have some of the cards, the minimum order is 100. And you can order them through me by going to my blog, myalzheimersstory.com, and contacting me via the contact form. So thanks a lot, and good luck using BANGS. I hope it works for you, and if you have some feedback to give me, that would be great as well. Thanks, and bye. Bye.